Commander Tae-young Kim stood in the observation deck of Deep Space Monitoring Station Alpha 7, his eyes fixed on the holographic display before him. Red markers bloomed across the screen like drops of blood spreading through water. Each marker represented an alien vessel, and there were thousands of them. He had been monitoring deep space for 12 years, watching for asteroids, cataloging distant stars, tracking the occasional piece of space debris. Never in his career had he seen anything like this. The fleet had appeared at the edge of the solar system 3 hours ago, materializing out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. Tae-young's hands moved quickly across the console, running calculations and rerunning them, hoping for an error in the system. There was no error. 5,327 ships. They were positioning themselves in a wide arc beyond Mars' orbit, creating a blockade that sealed Earth off from the rest of the galaxy. "Send priority transmission to Earth Defense Command," he said to his communications officer. "Tell them we have company." On Earth, in the gleaming orbital headquarters that circled the planet like a silver ring, Ambassador Deun Park received the alert while reviewing trade proposals. She was a career diplomat, someone who believed that words could solve almost any problem. She had negotiated peace between nations, mediated disputes between corporations, and helped establish the framework for humanity's first tentative steps into the wider galaxy. Nothing in her experience had prepared her for what came next. The transmission arrived on all frequencies simultaneously. It overrode every communication system on Earth and every human installation throughout the solar system. The being that appeared on screens across human space was massive, its body composed of what looked like living crystal that shifted and refracted light into rainbow patterns. "Humans of Earth," the being said, its voice like wind chimes mixed with grinding stone. "I am First Speaker Thelvorn of the Galaxy Council. You have been judged." Deun felt her stomach drop. She had known about the Galaxy Council for only 5 years, ever since humanity's first faster-than-light probe had stumbled into one of their monitoring stations. The Council claimed to govern 47 different species across thousands of worlds. They had rules, protocols, and, most importantly, they had power that made Earth's military look like children playing with toys. "Your species has expanded too quickly," Thelvorn continued. "You have developed weapons technology at a rate we find alarming. You have refused our guidance and rejected our authority. The Council has debated your fate for 3 of your years. The decision is final." Deun gripped the edge of her desk. She wanted to scream, to demand an explanation, to argue that Earth had every right to develop as it saw fit. But she stayed silent, knowing that interrupting might make things worse. "You have 72 hours to comply with the following terms. You will dismantle all military installations throughout your solar system. You will surrender control of your government to a council administrator. You will submit to complete technological oversight. You will accept limits on your population and expansion. If you refuse, or if you attempt any hostile action, our fleet will sterilize your planet. Every city will burn. Every human life will end. We have done this before to species that threatened galactic stability. We will do it again if necessary." The transmission ended as abruptly as it had begun, leaving screens blank and billions of humans staring in shocked silence. Within an hour, President Hyun-woo Choi had convened an emergency session in the war room deep beneath the orbital headquarters. The room was packed with military leaders, scientists, and advisors, all talking over each other in a chaos of fear and anger. General Ji Hae-song stood at the tactical display, her face grim. She was a woman who had fought in 3 different conflicts before the age of 35, someone who understood war in ways most people never would. The numbers on her screen told a story that made her want to weep. "We're looking at complete technological superiority," she said, her voice cutting through the noise. "Their smallest ships outgun our largest battleships. They have energy shields we can't penetrate. Their weapons can destroy a city from orbit in seconds. In a conventional fight, we would last maybe 6 hours before complete defeat." Admiral Dong-Jun Lee, commander of Earth's orbital fleet, nodded in agreement. "I recommend we begin immediate evacuation protocols. Get as many people off Earth as possible. Scatter them throughout the solar system, send colony ships beyond Council space. Maybe some of humanity can survive, even if Earth falls. Run? General Song turned to face him. You want us to run? I want some of us to live, Lee shot back. What other choice do we have? Dr. Youngmi Han, Earth's leading physicist and head of the Advanced Weapons Division, raised her hand for attention. She was younger than most people in the room, barely 40, with eyes that burned with fierce intelligence. There might be another option, she said. Give me time to analyze their technology. Everything we've seen suggests they rely heavily on energy-based systems. Shields, weapons, propulsion. We might be able to exploit that. We don't have time, someone shouted from the back of the room. President Choi stood, and the room fell silent. He was not a military man. Before becoming president, he had been a teacher, then a governor, then a reformer who had united Earth's fractured nations under a single government. He believed in democracy, in human rights, in the power of civilization over barbarism. But he also believed that some things were worth dying for. Commander Kim, he said, activating a direct link to the monitoring station. Your analysis of their fleet positioning. What did you find? Tae-young's image appeared on the main screen. He looked tired, but there was something in his expression that caught everyone's attention. They're positioned for intimidation, not battle, Tae-young said. It's a formation designed to look overwhelming, and it is overwhelming, but it's not optimized for actual combat. They're spread too thin. Their command ship is in the center, exposed. They've left gaps in their coverage that suggest they've never fought an opponent who uses unconventional tactics. What are you saying? President Choi asked. I'm saying they expect us to surrender or fight like they do. Big ships, organized fleets, honorable combat. They don't expect guerrilla warfare. They don't expect us to be willing to sacrifice everything. They don't expect humans. General Song smiled for the first time since the transmission. It was not a pleasant smile. President Choi looked around the room, meeting the eyes of everyone present. He saw fear, yes, but he also saw something else. He saw the same stubborn defiance that had carried humanity through countless disasters, the same refusal to give up that had taken them from caves to space stations. Dr. Han, you have 70 hours. Build me weapons. General Song, Admiral Lee, prepare every ship, every station, every gun we have. Commander Kim, map every weakness in their formation. And, Ambassador Park, he turned to Daeun, who had been silent throughout the meeting. Prepare a message for the Galaxy Council. Tell them that Earth rejects their ultimatum. Tell them that humanity chooses freedom over submission. Tell them that if they want our world, they'll have to take it over our dead bodies. Daeun felt something shift inside her. All her training, all her belief in diplomacy seemed suddenly inadequate. But she nodded. Tell them one more thing, President Choi said, his voice hard as iron. Tell them that they should have brought more ships. The countdown began. 72 hours until war. Daeun Park had never been afraid of speaking in public. She had addressed the United Nations, negotiated with hostile governments, and once talked down a terrorist who had taken hostages in the Tokyo spaceport. But, as she stood in the broadcast chamber, waiting to address the entire Galaxy Council, her hands trembled. The chamber was empty except for her and the camera array. In 60 seconds, her message would be transmitted to the Council fleet, to every Council world, and to billions of beings who had never heard a human voice before. She would be the face of humanity's defiance, and her words would either buy Earth precious time or seal its doom. The countdown reached 0. The red light activated. Members of the Galaxy Council, she began, forcing her voice to remain steady. I am Ambassador Daeun Park, representative of the human species and the planet Earth. I am here to deliver our response to your ultimatum. She paused, thinking of the billions watching on Earth, the families huddled in shelters, the soldiers preparing for battle, the children who might not live to see tomorrow. We reject your terms. All of them. Completely and without negotiation. Somewhere in the Council fleet, she knew, beings were probably laughing at human arrogance. Let them laugh. You call us dangerous because we develop weapons. You call us reckless because we expand quickly. You call us a threat because we refuse to bow to your authority. But let me tell you what we call ourselves. We call ourselves survivors. Dedun stepped closer to the camera, her fear burning away, replaced by something fiercer. Humans have survived ice ages that covered our world in glaciers. We survived plagues that killed half our population. We survived wars that turned our cities into ash. We nearly destroyed our own planet with pollution and nuclear weapons, and yet we found a way to pull back from the edge and build something better. We are descended from people who crossed frozen continents on foot, who sailed across oceans in wooden boats, who looked at the stars and decided that distance was just another problem to solve. She could imagine the council representatives watching this, their alien faces confused or dismissive. They had crushed other species before. What made humans different? You threaten to sterilize our planet. You think that threat will make us surrender. But you don't understand us. Every human alive today carries the genes of people who refuse to give up when giving up would have been easier. Our ancestors hunted animals bigger and stronger than themselves by simply refusing to stop chasing them. We ran our prey to death through pure persistence. That's what we do. We don't quit. The words were flowing now, coming from somewhere deep inside her. So here is what will happen. In 70 hours, your fleet will attack Earth. And we will fight you. We will fight with every weapon we have, with every ship, with every person. We will make you pay for every mile of space, for every orbital station, for every city. And, when you finally stand on the ashes of our world, you will have paid a price so high that every other species in the galaxy will see it and ask themselves if the Council is really invincible. She took a breath, delivering the final words that President Choi had approved. Humanity will not go quietly into the dark. We will rage against it. And, if we must die, we will make sure the galaxy never forgets what it cost to kill us. This is Earth's answer. Come and take it. The transmission ended. Daun's legs nearly gave out as the camera light died. She had just declared war on an empire of stars. While Daun delivered humanity's defiance to the galaxy, General Song was turning the solar system into a weapons platform. In the 60 hours since the ultimatum, she had barely slept. There was too much to do and not enough time to do it. Every orbital station was being retrofitted. Mining installations in the asteroid belt, scientific research platforms, even commercial shipping docks were being equipped with whatever weapons could be mounted in the time available. Railguns designed for moving cargo were being recalibrated to fire projectiles at enemy ships. Nuclear missiles intended for asteroid deflection were being reprogrammed for war. The transformation was chaotic and desperate, but it was happening. Humanity had spent decades building infrastructure throughout the solar system, and now every piece of it was becoming a fortress. General Song stood in the command center of Fortress Rampart, Earth's primary orbital defense platform, watching the holographic display as thousands of civilian ships moved into position. Freighters, mining vessels, research ships, even luxury yachts had been volunteered by their crews. Many would be destroyed in the first minutes of combat, but their crews knew that and came anyway. She opened a channel to one of the civilian captains, a woman named Minji Quan who commanded a mid-sized cargo freighter called the Indomitable. Captain Quan, you understand that your ship has no armor and minimal weapons. You don't have to do this. Minji's face appeared on the screen, young and determined. With respect, General, yes I do. This is my home. These are my people. Where else would I be? Song nodded, feeling a fierce pride in this woman she had never met before. Then, welcome to Earth Defense Fleet, Captain. May your aim be true and your courage unbreakable. Similar conversations were happening across the solar system. Millions of people who had never fired a weapon were learning how. Factories that made consumer goods were producing ammunition instead. Every resource humanity possessed was being poured into one desperate goal: make the Council bleed. Deep in the research facilities on Luna, Dr. Young Mihan worked on weapons that the galaxy had never seen. The Council relied on energy shields and directed energy weapons. Their ships were marvels of advanced technology, able to deflect laser fire and absorb particle beams. But they had apparently never bothered to develop defenses against simple kinetic energy. "It's beautiful," Han said, reviewing the calculations for the 100th time. "They're so advanced that they've forgotten the basics." Her team had been working on a project called Avalanche. It was crude compared to Council technology, but that was exactly the point. They had taken thousands of asteroids, hollowed them out, packed them with nuclear explosives, and positioned them in hidden trajectories throughout the solar system. When the battle began, these asteroids would be accelerated to incredible speeds using railgun launchers hidden on planetary moons. No energy shield in the galaxy could stop several thousand tons of rock traveling at a significant fraction of light speed. The kinetic energy alone would tear ships apart. But Han wasn't stopping there. She had dozens of other projects in various stages of completion. Drone swarms that would overwhelm targeting systems through sheer numbers. Electromagnetic pulse weapons to fry enemy electronics. Viruses designed to infect Council computer systems. Even experimental gravity weapons that might tear enemy ships apart at the molecular level. Were any of them ethical? Probably not. Would they work? Maybe. But Han had stopped worrying about ethics when the Council threatened to burn every child on Earth alive. Commander Tae-young Kim watched it all from his monitoring station, coordinating the defensive grid and looking for any weakness in the Council formation. He had barely left his post in 2 days, surviving on stimulants and determination. The Council fleet remained in position beyond Mars, apparently confident that their ultimatum would be obeyed. They hadn't moved, hadn't adjusted their formation, hadn't shown any sign of preparing for battle. Their arrogance was both infuriating and useful. Tae-young had mapped every ship in the fleet, catalogued their probable weapons, and identified what he thought was their command vessel, a massive dreadnought in the center of the formation that pulsed with more energy signatures than any other ship. If they could kill that ship, the Council fleet might fall into chaos. It was a slim hope, but it was something. He sent his analysis to General Song, along with a tactical proposal that most military academies would call insane. She responded within minutes with a single word: approved. The countdown continued. 48 hours until war. Humanity prepared to fight for its survival against impossible odds, armed with determination, creativity, and a fundamental refusal to accept defeat. In homes across Earth, families said goodbye to loved ones joining the defense forces. Parents held their children and tried to explain why the sky might soon fill with fire. Couples promised to find each other again, somehow, even if the world ended. And, in the command centers, on the orbital stations, aboard the hastily armed civilian ships, millions of humans made the same choice that their ancestors had made countless times before. They would not surrender. They would not flee. They would stand and fight, no matter the cost. The Galaxy Council had declared war on Earth. Humanity's answer was ready as the Galaxy Council fleet advanced at exactly 72 hours after their ultimatum expired, moving with the slow confidence of a power that had never known defeat. 5,000 ships crossed the orbit of Mars in perfect formation, their weapons charging, their shields glowing with barely contained energy. Admiral Dong Jun Lee watched from the command deck of Fortress Rampart as the alien armada drew closer. Every screen showed the same terrifying sight: ships the size of cities, weapons that could crack planets, shields that shimmered with colors that human eyes had never evolved to see properly. His own fleet looked pitiful in comparison. 300 military vessels of various sizes, maybe 1,000 civilian ships with hastily mounted weapons, and the orbital defense platforms scattered throughout Earth's space. Against any reasonable enemy, it would have been enough. Against the Council, it looked like a joke. But Lee had not survived 3 decades of military service by being reasonable. "All stations report ready," his communications officer announced. Lee took a deep breath and opened a fleet-wide channel. "This is Admiral Lee to all Earth forces. The enemy expects us to fight like them, with big ships and honorable tactics. We're going to disappoint them. When the shooting starts, there are no rules. Hit them where they don't expect it. Make them hurt. Make them remember that they attacked Earth. And, if you have to die today, take as many of them with you as you can." He paused, thinking of his own family sheltering in bunkers far below the surface. For Earth. All weapons free. The battle began not with a grand charge but, with something the Council had apparently never encountered, patience followed by sudden, overwhelming violence. Commander Tae-young Kim had spent 70 hours studying the Council fleet's movements, their formation, their communications patterns. He had found their rhythm, the way they moved and thought and organized themselves. And, then, he had designed a strategy specifically to break that rhythm. The first attack came from the asteroids. Thousands of rock fragments, each one carefully positioned over the past 3 days, suddenly accelerated toward the Council fleet. They had been hidden in the background radiation of space, camouflaged among the countless pieces of natural debris that drifted through the solar system. The Council sensors detected them too late. Their ships began to maneuver, activating defensive systems designed to handle energy weapons and guided missiles. But these weren't missiles. They were just rocks, traveling at speeds that made them deadlier than any bomb. The energy shields that protected Council ships from laser fire might as well have been tissue paper against pure kinetic energy. The first asteroid fragment slammed into a cruiser-sized vessel, punching through the shield and the hull as if neither existed. The ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light and debris. Then, the next one hit. And the next. And the next. In the span of 30 seconds, the Council's vanguard lost 47 ships. The perfect formation shattered as captains tried to dodge the incoming rocks, some colliding with their own allies in the chaos. That was when Captain Min-ji Kwon led the civilian fleet in their attack. Her ship, the Indomitable, was a cargo freighter with a single railgun mounted on its nose and armor plating welded to its hull in random patches. Behind her flew hundreds of similar vessels, a ragtag fleet of miners and traders and transport captains who had decided that dying in battle was better than living as slaves. "All ships, follow my lead," Min-ji broadcast, her hands steady on the controls despite the terror singing through her veins. "Target the damaged ones. Don't give them time to recover." The civilian fleet dove into the heart of the Council formation like sharks attacking wounded prey. They were faster than the big military ships, more maneuverable, and completely unpredictable. The Council vessels tried to target them, but their weapon systems were designed for large-scale fleet combat, not for hitting small, wildly maneuvering targets. Min-ji fired her railgun at a Council destroyer that was venting atmosphere from the asteroid strike. The metal slug punched through already weakened armor and detonated the ship's reactor. She pulled her ship into a hard turn, barely avoiding return fire, and lined up her next shot. Around her, the battle turned into chaos. The Council fleet's organized structure fell apart as human ships attacked from every direction, refusing to form lines or follow any predictable pattern. General Son unleashed the second phase of Earth's defense, the drones. From every human installation, from hidden launchers on moons and asteroids, from the holds of military ships, millions of autonomous attack drones poured into space. Each one was small, cheap to produce, and equipped with just enough explosives to damage a ship's hull if it could get close enough. The Council's advanced targeting systems could track thousands of objects simultaneously, but there were too many drones. They swarmed over the alien ships like locusts, overwhelming sensors and defensive weapons through sheer numbers. Individual drones meant nothing. Losing 100 of them or 1,000 didn't matter. But, cumulatively, they were devastating. They latched onto hull plating and detonated, targeting sensor arrays, weapon mounts, communication equipment, engine ports. They turned mighty warships into blind, crippled targets. A Council dreadnought the size of a small city tried to clear the drones with its point defense lasers, but, for every 10 drones it destroyed, 3 got through. The ship's hull began to look like it had contracted a disease, pockmarked with small explosions and venting gas. Dr. Young Mi-han watched the battle from her laboratory on Luna, monitoring the performance of every weapon system she had designed. The kinetic weapons were working better than expected. The drones were exceeding all projections. But the Council fleet was adapting, their ships beginning to coordinate their defenses and support each other. It was time for the next surprise. "Activate Hellstorm," she ordered. Throughout the battle space, hidden weapon platforms that had been disguised as debris came to life. They were electromagnetic pulse generators, designed to fry electronics at close range. When they fired, they created cascading failures in nearby council ships, causing shields to flicker and weapons to misfire. In the confusion, human ships pressed their advantage. Military frigates targeted the disabled vessels with nuclear missiles. The Council's energy shields, when they worked, could deflect the thermal and radiation effects of a nuclear explosion. But, when the shields failed, even for a second, the missiles did terrible damage. The space around Mars' orbit became a hell of fire and destruction. Ships on both sides died in explosions that lit up the dark like temporary suns. Debris filled the area, creating navigation hazards that claimed more victims. Captain Kwan's ship took a direct hit from a Council particle beam. The Indomitable's makeshift armor held for a moment, then vaporized. The blast tore through her ship's midsection, killing half her crew instantly and venting the cargo holds to space. Hull breach on decks 2 through 5, her surviving engineer shouted over the alarms. Life support failing. Engines are gone. Minji looked at her tactical display. They were drifting, powerless, right in the path of an advancing Council battleship. Her remaining crew looked at her, waiting for orders. Abandon ship, she said quietly. Then, louder, everyone to the escape pods. Now. Captain, you need to go too, her engineer protested. I will. I just need to do one more thing. She waited until the last of her crew had evacuated, then programmed the ship's computer for a final task. The Indomitable still had maneuvering thrusters, and its cargo holds were still full of refined metals from its last mining run. Minji aimed the dying ship at the Council battleship and set the thrusters to maximum. As she ran for the last escape pod, her ship accelerated toward the enemy vessel. The Council captain apparently didn't consider the wreck a threat until too late. The Indomitable slammed into the battleship's bridge section at full thrust, and the cargo of refined metals added enough mass to the impact to punch through the armor. Both ships died together in a brilliant explosion. Admiral Lee watched the battle from Rampart, his face grim as the casualty reports flooded in. Earth was losing ships at a terrible rate. Every minute brought news of another station destroyed, another frigate blown apart, another crew dead. But the Council was losing too. The alien fleet that had arrived with such confidence was being torn apart by an opponent that refused to fight fair. The Council had lost hundreds of ships, and the human weapons kept coming. The Council's command ship, the massive dreadnought that Tae Young had identified, sat in the center of the fleet trying to coordinate the defense. Its shields were holding against everything humanity threw at it, and its weapons were devastating when they found a target. Lee made a decision that he knew would haunt him for the rest of his life, however long that might be. All remaining military vessels, focus fire on the command ship. I don't care what it costs. Bring it down. 20 human warships broke formation and dove toward the dreadnought in a suicide run, their weapons firing constantly. Council escorts tried to intercept them, destroying ship after ship, but enough got through. And then, Dr. Han activated her experimental weapon. The gravity disruptors had been a desperate gamble, weapons based on theoretical physics that might not even work. But, when they fired, aimed at the Council command ship, they did something that made even Han whisper a prayer of thanks. The space around the dreadnought twisted. The ship's shields interacted badly with the gravity waves, creating feedback loops that tore at the vessel's structure. Armor plates buckled. Internal systems failed. And, when the human missiles struck the weakened shields, they punched through. The command ship didn't explode. It simply came apart, breaking into pieces as fundamental forces ripped it to atoms. The Council fleet suddenly had no unified command. Ship captains who had been following orders found themselves alone, facing an enemy that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The tide of battle turned. What had been a desperate defense became something else, a fight that humanity might actually survive. 3 weeks after the battle began, something impossible happened. The Galaxy Council fleet started to retreat from the solar system. Admiral Lee stood in the command center of Fortress Rampart, which was now missing half its modules and limping on backup power, watching the alien ships pull back beyond Mars' orbit. He had seen many strange things in his military career, but nothing as strange as watching an overwhelming enemy force run away from a weaker opponent. "Confirm that," he said to his sensor operator, unable to believe the readings. "Confirmed, sir. Council ships are breaking formation and moving to jump coordinates. They're leaving." Around the command center, exhausted officers who hadn't slept properly in weeks started to cheer. Some cried. Others simply sat down, too tired to feel anything but numb relief. Lee didn't cheer. He was looking at casualty reports that made him want to weep. Earth had lost over 60% of its military fleet. 43 orbital stations had been destroyed or damaged beyond repair. The civilian death toll was approaching 2 million, mostly from debris that had fallen through the atmosphere and struck cities. They had survived, but the cost was devastating. On the other side of the galaxy, in the Council's primary command station orbiting the world of Talaxis Prime, Supreme Commander Velcaris faced the assembled representatives of 47 member species. The chamber was filled with angry voices, all demanding explanations for the disaster at Earth. Velcaris was a being whose species had led the Council military for 2,000 years. His people had crushed rebellions on 100 worlds, defeated rogue artificial intelligences, and held the borders against extragalactic threats. In his 3-century career, he had never known defeat. Until now. "How?" demanded the representative from the Helion Collective, a species of energy beings who communicated through controlled radiation bursts. "How did primitives who only achieved faster than light travel 15 years ago destroy 1/5 of our fleet?" Velcaris looked at the tactical reports, still struggling to understand what had happened. "They fought without honor or restraint. They used weapons we had classified as obsolete. They employed tactics that violated every principle of civilized warfare. They sacrificed their own people in ways that no sane species would accept." "Are you saying they're insane?" another representative asked. "No," Velcaris said slowly. "I'm saying they're willing to pay any price for their freedom. And that makes them more dangerous than any enemy we've faced in 1,000 years." The debate raged for hours. Some species wanted to gather a larger fleet and finish what they had started. Others argued that the cost would be too high. A few quietly wondered if perhaps the Council had been wrong to attack in the first place. Ambassador Dune Park received a communication request from the Council the next day. She had been helping coordinate relief efforts for cities damaged by falling debris when the message arrived. Part of her wanted to ignore it, to let the Council stew in their defeat. But she was still a diplomat, and this might be humanity's only chance to avoid a second attack. She stood in the same broadcast chamber where she had delivered Earth's Defiant message 3 weeks earlier. This time, when the connection established, she faced a dozen holographic representatives from different Council species. "Ambassador Park," one of them began, a creature that looked like a floating mass of tentacles. "The Council wishes to discuss terms for a ceasefire." Dune felt a surge of satisfaction that she carefully kept off her face. "I'm listening. We propose a withdrawal of forces from your solar system in exchange for certain guarantees from Earth. You will limit your military expansion. You will submit to inspections to ensure you're not developing weapons of mass destruction. You will accept Council observers in your government." "No," Dune said simply. The Council representatives seemed taken aback by her immediate refusal. "These terms are generous considering you are the defeated party," the tentacled being said. Dune laughed, a sharp sound without humor. "Defeated? Your fleet is running away with its tail between its legs. You came to destroy us and we're still here. If anyone is defeated, it's not Earth." She leaned toward the camera, her diplomatic mask falling away to reveal the anger underneath. "Here are humanity's terms. You will formally recognize Earth's sovereignty. You will establish trade agreements on equal terms, not as master to servant. You will grant humanity representation on the Council itself, with full voting rights. And you will pay reparations for the damage your attack caused." The Council chamber erupted in protests. Several representatives began shouting at once, their translators struggling to keep up with the babble of alien languages. But Daun also noticed that some representatives remained silent, watching her with what might have been respect. President Hyunwoo Choi convened a meeting with his military command to discuss the next steps. General Song, her uniform still bearing scorch marks from a fire that had broken out in her command center during the battle, presented an aggressive proposal. "We should strike back," she said. "While the council is confused and disorganized, we should take the war to them. Hit their installations, prove that Earth is not just capable of defense but of offense. That could provoke them into sending an even larger fleet," Admiral Lee argued. He looked older than he had a month ago, worn down by the weight of the casualties. "We barely survived this attack. We won't survive a second one." Dr. Han had a different suggestion. "We should focus on information warfare. The Council controls its member species through a combination of military might and the belief that resistance is futile. We just proved that's not true. Imagine if we could spread that message throughout the galaxy." The president listened to all of them, then made a decision that split the difference. "We'll do both. General Song, prepare a strike force for one major target. Something that will prove we can reach Council territory. But make it surgical, not an invasion. Dr. Han, start broadcasting footage of the battle on every frequency we can access. Let the galaxy see that the Council can bleed. And, Admiral Lee, continue defensive preparations. Hope for peace, but prepare for war." The strike force was ready within a week. Lieutenant Jae-sung Park, a fighter pilot who had survived the battle and destroyed 3 Council ships in the process, was chosen to lead the mission. He was young, barely 25, but he had proven himself in combat and he understood the stakes. His squadron consisted of 12 of Earth's newest fighters, equipped with the latest weapons Dr. Han's team had developed. They also carried something more important: cameras and recording equipment. This mission wasn't just about destruction, it was about sending a message. Commander Tae-young Kim had spent the week since the battle analyzing Council communications and stellar maps captured during the fighting. He identified a target, the Council's primary shipyard at Kepler 442b, a massive facility that produced new warships for the Council fleet. "It's defended," he warned Lieutenant Park during the briefing. "Probably by at least 50 ships, maybe more. You'll have maybe 15 minutes before reinforcements arrive. Get in, do as much damage as you can, and get out." Jae-sung nodded, his face calm despite the fear he felt. "And if we can't get out? Then, make sure your cameras are still broadcasting. Let Earth see what you accomplished." The strike force jumped into Council space using coordinates captured from a damaged enemy ship. They emerged in the Kepler 442 system just outside the shipyard's defensive perimeter. The facility was enormous, a structure the size of a small moon with hundreds of ships in various stages of construction. Defensive platforms surrounded it, weapons already tracking toward the human fighters. "All wings, attack pattern Delta," Jae-sung ordered, his fighter accelerating toward the shipyard. "Target the construction bays. Maximum damage, minimum time." The human fighters dove into the defensive fire like arrows into a storm. 2 were destroyed in the first 30 seconds, their pilots dying before they could even fire a shot. But the rest got through, their weapons tearing into the partially built ships and the construction infrastructure. Jae-sung fired everything his fighter had, watching as missiles and railgun rounds tore through the shipyard's superstructure. Explosions bloomed across the facility as fuel tanks ruptured and fusion reactors went critical. The Council's defensive fleet tried to intercept them, but the human fighters were already breaking away, using the debris and explosions as cover. They jumped back to human space with seconds to spare, having lost 5 pilots but accomplishing their mission. The shipyard's destruction was broadcast across the galaxy within hours. Every species under Council rule saw the footage, human ships striking deep into Council territory, destroying a facility that had stood for centuries, and escaping before the Council could respond. Ambassador Park received a second communication request from the Council 3 days later. This time, the tone was different. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something that might have been respect or might have been fear. The Council agrees to discuss your terms, the message said simply. Earth had proven it could defend itself. It had proven it could strike back. Now came the hardest part, building a peace that both sides could accept. General Song stood in what remained of Fortress Rampart, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Galaxy Council was trying to decide whether to negotiate or to try again with a larger fleet. She couldn't control that decision. All she could do was make sure Earth was ready for whatever came next. Ships were being repaired, new weapons were being built, and humanity was learning from every mistake made during the battle. If the Council attacked again, they would find Earth even more prepared, even more dangerous. But Song found herself hoping for peace. Not because she was afraid of another war, but because she had seen enough death to last a lifetime. The bodies floating in space, the cities reduced to rubble, the children who would grow up without parents. Victory felt hollow when you had to pay for it with so much blood. The galaxy was changing. Humanity had forced its way onto the galactic stage not through diplomacy or gradual acceptance, but through violence and defiance. Now both sides would have to figure out how to live with that reality. 6 months after the war began, Ambassador Deun Park walked into the Galaxy Council's Grand Assembly for the first time as something more than a supplicant. The chamber was a massive structure orbiting a binary star system, built by a species that had gone extinct 3,000 years ago but whose architecture still inspired awe. Deun had spent weeks preparing for this moment. She had studied the political dynamics of every council species, learned their customs and their grievances, and prepared arguments for every possible objection to humanity's demands. But no amount of preparation could fully ready her for walking into a room where she would face representatives from over 200 different species, many of whom still wanted humanity destroyed. The chamber fell silent as she entered. Thousands of eyes, in more varieties than human biology could produce, turned to watch her. Some were curious. Others were hostile. A few showed what might have been respect. Supreme Commander Valkaris stood at the primary podium, his crystalline body refracting the light from the binary stars into rainbow patterns. His voice, when he spoke, carried across the chamber without need for amplification. The human delegation is recognized. Ambassador Park, you may present your case for inclusion in the council. Deun took her place at the speaker's platform, looking out at the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. Her hands wanted to tremble, but she kept them steady through sheer force of will. Honored representatives, she began. 6 months ago, you sent a fleet to destroy my world. You offered us a choice between submission and death. We chose a third option, resistance. And here we are. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Some angry, some thoughtful. Humanity seeks formal recognition as a sovereign species, trade agreements on equal terms, and full representation on this council. We understand these demands seem audacious. We're a young species by galactic standards. But we've proven that age doesn't determine capability or resolve. A representative from the Vexor Dominion, a species that looked like mobile plants with crystalline flowers for heads, rose to speak. You demand too much. Your species attacked our shipyard, killed thousands of our workers, and destroyed property worth more than your entire planet's economy. You should be begging for mercy, not demanding rights. Deun met the representative's gaze without flinching. That shipyard was producing ships for a fleet meant to finish what your first attack started. We struck it in self-defense. And, as for begging, humanity doesn't beg. We negotiate or we fight. Those are the only 2 options we offer. The Vexor representative's flowers darkened in what Deun had learned was a sign of anger. Your arrogance will be your downfall. Perhaps, Deun acknowledged. But it will be our downfall, on our terms, in our way. We will never again allow another species to dictate humanity's future. The debate that followed lasted for 3 days. Some species argued for renewing military action against Earth. Others pointed out that the cost of the first war had been devastating and a second attempt might cost even more. A few species, mostly smaller ones who had chafed under council authority, quietly supported humanity's position. On the 3rd day, Dr. Young Mi-han arrived at the council station to present a proposal that changed the political calculations entirely. She stood before the assembly with a data crystal containing research that Earth had conducted during the war. "The council faces a threat that you've been fighting for centuries," Han began, her voice calm and professional. "The extragalactic swarms that appear every few generations, consuming resources and attacking your border worlds. Your energy-based weapons are effective against them, but not as effective as you'd like." She activated a holographic display showing footage of council ships fighting against creatures that looked like a combination of machines and organic matter, things that move through space like sharks through water. "Human kinetic weapons are extremely effective against these entities. Our railguns, our missiles, our simple explosives all bypass their adaptive defenses. If you combine council energy shields and faster-than-light drives with human weapons technology, you could create defensive platforms capable of stopping swarm incursions before they reach populated worlds." The assembly erupted in discussion. The swarms were a topic that the council had avoided mentioning to humanity, a problem they considered internal. But now a human was offering a solution, and the military representatives in the chamber were clearly interested. Velkaris studied the data, his crystalline form pulsing with different colors as he processed the information. "You would share this technology with us? After we attempted to destroy your world?" Han smiled without humor. "We would share it in exchange for peace, recognition, and cooperation. Think of it as a trade. You get weapons that could save billions of your citizens. We get to exist without fear of another attack. Everyone wins." President Hyunwoo Choi watched the negotiations from Earth, following the live feed with a mixture of hope and anxiety. The past 6 months had been the most stressful of his life. Rebuilding the damaged cities, supporting the families of those who had died in the war, maintaining defensive readiness while trying to restart normal trade and commerce. His advisors had argued about whether offering the council access to human weapons technology was wise. Some feared it would give the council new ways to attack Earth. Others pointed out that the council already had overwhelming technological advantages in most areas, and balancing that with human advantages in kinetic weapons might actually create stability. In the end, Choi had decided that the risk was worth it if it could prevent another war. Earth couldn't survive another attack like the first one. The next time, the council might send 10,000 She met with Velkaris in a neutral location, a space station at the edge of human territory. The meeting was tense. They were former enemies, now forced to cooperate. "You fight well," Velkaris said, his voice carrying something that might have been respect. "But you fight without honor. Your tactics are crude, brutal, and effective." Son didn't take offense. "We fight to win. Honor is for species that can afford it. Humanity couldn't afford to lose, so we used every advantage we had. Will you teach us these tactics?" Son considered the question carefully. "Some of them. In exchange for training our people in council military doctrine. We can learn from each other." It was a small step, but it was a beginning. Lieutenant Jae-sung Park became one of the first humans accepted into a joint council human-military exchange program. He found himself on a council warship, learning their technology and teaching them human fighter tactics. The other pilots treated him with a mixture of suspicion and curiosity, but gradually they began to accept him. He learned that most council species had never questioned their military doctrine, had never imagined that there might be other ways to fight. Human tactics, which seemed chaotic and desperate to council thinking, opened new possibilities. In return, Jae-sung learned how to pilot ships that could cross the galaxy in days instead of months, how energy shields worked, and how to coordinate with alien species whose thought processes were fundamentally different from human ones. It was strange, fighting alongside beings who had tried to kill him 6 months ago. But it was also hopeful, a sign that maybe the galaxy could change. Commander Tae-young Kim continued his work monitoring space, but now he coordinated with council observation stations throughout the galaxy. The defensive grid he had built to protect Earth was being expanded, with council technology enhancing human sensors and human tactical analysis improving council response times. He watched as ships from a dozen different species began regular trade routes through the solar system, bringing goods and knowledge that Earth had never accessed before. It was the future humanity had dreamed of, contact with galactic civilization, but it had come at a terrible cost. 8 months after the war began, Ambassador Park stood in the council chamber for the signing of the Treaty of Terra. The document was a compromise, giving neither side everything they wanted but providing a framework for coexistence. Earth was recognized as a sovereign power with full rights and protections under council law. Humanity would have representation on the council, with voting rights on matters affecting galactic policy. Trade agreements were established that treated Earth as an equal partner rather than a conquered province. In exchange, Earth agreed to participate in the Council's defense against external threats, to share select technologies, and to submit to the same regulations that governed all Council species regarding weapons of mass destruction and environmental protection. It wasn't perfect, but it was peace. As Deun signed the treaty, she thought about the price humanity had paid for this moment. 2 million dead. Countless more injured or displaced. Cities damaged, ships destroyed, families torn apart. All because the Council had decided that humanity was a threat that needed to be eliminated. But she also thought about what humanity had gained. They had proven that they could stand against the mightiest power in the galaxy. They had earned respect through courage and defiance. And they had secured a future where humans could explore the stars as free beings, not as servants or subjects. The treaty celebration continued around her, with representatives from different species mingling and discussing the new reality. But Deun slipped away to a quiet observation deck, looking out at the binary stars that dominated the view. President Choi's message reached her there, transmitted across light years in an instant. Well done, Ambassador. You've given humanity what it needed, recognition and peace. But never forget what it cost us. Defensive preparations will continue. We'll engage with the Council in good faith, but we'll never again be caught unprepared. The age of human isolation is over, but so is the age of human weakness. Deun understood. The treaty was real, and humanity would honor it. But trust would take generations to build. Earth would participate in galactic civilization while maintaining the military strength to defend itself if necessary. She looked out at the stars, thinking about all the worlds out there, all the species humanity would now interact with, all the possibilities and dangers of galactic civilization. The war was over. Humanity had survived, had even won in a sense. But the real challenge was just beginning, learning to live in a galaxy that would never again underestimate the species from Earth. The Council had learned what it cost to attack humanity. Now both sides would learn what it took to build a lasting peace. And, somewhere, on distant worlds throughout the galaxy, other species watched and wondered if they too could defy the Council if they had the courage. The galaxy would never be the same. And that, Deun thought with a small smile, was exactly what humanity had fought for.